today's agenda, we're going to go through the entire solution overview for Employer Solutions. We'll talk about our actual Employer Solutions division itself. Going to give you just a brief slideshow presentation, and then, like I said, we'll walk through our actual recruiting module, our employee self-service module. We'll talk about our HRActions module, which allows you to walk through, make changes to employee profiles, handle those day-to-day workflow issues that occur. And then we'll jump into the actual core HRMS itself and as we go through. Then, like I said, we'll have about 5 minutes of questions at the very end. I know we've only scheduled an hour today, so I want to definitely be prudent on the time. But if you have any questions, feel free to send them to me, as I mentioned in the chat bar. We'll walk through. Just a beginning, Sage, we're a global organization. We're based out of the UK. Our Employer Solutions division, however, is based out of St. Petersburg, Florida. And basically just wanted to tell you a little bit about ourselves. We have been in the HRMS business since 1985. We started out creating a product called Abracadabra, and today that has developed into Sage HRMS over the years. We're developed by HR professionals for HR professionals, meaning that our product managers still maintain APA and HRMS certificates, those kinds of things. And really what I want to focus on today is the actual solution itself and why we design it. It's very customizable. It's meant to fit your organization's budget and needs, and it really focuses around a single integrated database that is the single point of truth, if you will, for all things HRMS related. So as we go through the presentation today, one of the common themes that our division really looks for when we create our software is to grow your business. And one of my favorite quotes from my boss, my general manager, Johnny Laurent, is the best way for a company to increase its competitiveness is to invest in its employees. And today, that is more true than anything, is in the fact that companies are really learning to access and utilize their talent today. Not going to bore you with all the details, but we have a great site called ROEI.com that if you want to write down, it has a lot of different research that we've collected, that we've actually performed ourselves, and also that other great organizations have. And just simple things like for every $1 invested in employees, it yields 10 in profit. And it's evident in some of the really great organizations today that are doing well, even in today's economy. So the first question we like to ask is, how do you engage employees? We really believe that providing information, communicating effectively, and giving them the work environment and tools necessary to do their job empowers them. It makes for happier employees, and it also makes things more efficient so they can do more productive tasks in the future. So it really leads us to the very next step, is the employee life cycle. What does that mean? In this particular case, it's important to know that you're looking at a piece of software that's flexible, it's scalable, and it also has the ability to grow with your changing needs down the road as well. So it covers everything from hiring to retire in this particular case, or recruiting to retirement. And these different pieces might not be something that you're actually looking to see or actually deal with today. But again, like I said, it's important to know that you're looking at a piece of software that can, and it's very flexible. So a little about this HRMS solution itself. I mentioned that the actual HRMS, it is the centralized HR database that allows these different modules to seamlessly have this information flow. So for instance, whether you're looking at the recruiting module, or you're looking at different paperless HR, the HRActions, it allows you to seamlessly work with that HRMS information and really flow together and work with that without having silos of information all across your organization. Just gives you just another quick infographic of what everything the HRMS can accomplish in the actual surrounding modules as well. So as we like to say, our HRMS, it's truly an end-to-end solution, whether you're looking for the actual core HRMS application itself or extended solutions within our product suite. it gives you that features and functionalities to go through and manage those on a day-to-day basis. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch over to our actual software demonstration itself. Like I said, as we go through, if you have any questions, feel free to enter those in the chat, and I'll get those as soon as we open up our question line. And also, if you have any questions, I will be unmuting the phones at the very end so we can talk and speak. I have budgeted time at the end, and I can stay as long as we need to go through and do those as well. Be more than happy to. So without further ado, let me go ahead and switch over to our demonstration, and we will we'll walk through the actual recruiting module first. Okay. So hopefully everybody should be able to see the actual screen here. If you notice that I am inside the actual Cyber Recruiter module. If you notice, I've full screened it, but it is all 100% web-based. It's one of the nice features about quite a few of our modules is that they're web-based. You can utilize them anywhere. You don't need a piece of installed software to actually do the job. So that's the nice thing about it, is that you can actually utilize this from a tablet, from a phone, those kinds of things. And when you first log into the software, if you notice here, it gives you a couple different things right out of the gate. It tells you anything that's requiring your approval, and we'll see why that's important in a second from a recruiting standpoint. But it also tells you different things like how many applicants you have in the system, how many open requisitions, different views and lists and things like that. But again, talking about the actual HRMS data, it's important to know that working with this information, it works directly with the HRMS information and allows you to utilize that speed and efficiency of having that information already in the HRMS. So what do I mean by that? Well, the first thing in the recruiting cycle is when you go to actually post a requisition and have that approved, you simply go to the Create Requisition screen, and you can always create one from scratch. That can be time-consuming, and that's not always fun. You can create one from what we call a job list. And what it does is it takes all the different job codes and descriptions that are already in your HRMS, and it loads up here. So when we actually walk through and go through the wizard of posting a requisition into the system, this particular case, it's showing your actual organizational structure. What locations are saved in the HRMS? If we add one or remove one, this list is updated. Same thing goes for department. It can even automatically default, as it did, to a specific location and department in this particular case. Just moving along, it walks you through the entire template to post a requisition. Meaning in this case, if we have a specific job code, it auto-generates the next available one. Then it can ask you different features that might change. Again, coming directly from the HRMS. Who are your hiring managers? Who's responsible? You can do things like add an actual hiring manager here. Maybe it has a certain minimum, maximum salary that's based on the template, but maybe it was somebody with rights that we need to change this to attract a specific candidate. Just continuing on in the wizard, this is where the actual job description and informations, your knowledge, skills, and abilities, or KSAs, are functioned. And then any additional requirements or skills. And finally, when you get to the very end of the approval process, it'll even walk you through an actual workflow of approving this. So for instance, if you have a different change in manager or somebody that you'd like to set here, it can do that. It can automatically go through a standardized workflow if you'd like and walk through. And when you finally approve that and signs it off, it's going to send email notifications to each one of those managers saying that they need to sign in to approve that, so it's actually saved in the system. Now, the great thing about it is this has a full applicant tracking and job requisition page, meaning that the applicant can log in and create their own applicant profile. They can create their own information and actually apply for the job, but maybe you want to market the positions a couple more. As after the job gets approved in this particular case, you can actually utilize the links we have set up in the different job boards and upload this. Now, for instance, one of the things we always tell our clients is you might use a site like Career Builder, you might use somebody like Monster, but you would really direct them back to this applicant portal, your site, if you will, to actually apply for the position. So it's all in one standardized place. You can utilize your workflow, and it's your data, so you can constantly keep a list of all applicants and utilize that for your benefit in the future. It's one of the nice features about it. Now, speaking about requisitions, at any time, like I said, it's your data. You can easily go into the Find Requisition page and search for any requisition that's ever been entered in the system. Based on code, title, as you can see here, again, the hiring manager, whoever they were, date, requested range, the department, location, or we can just search for everything. And as we see here, it brought here 58 requisitions. I can sort by any number of these. I can go in and edit them, or I can view a specific requisition, if you will. So if I go in and I view the senior consultant position, it might have, again, that same data that we saw, the general information, the reason why it's open, job information. But if I hit the drop-down menu, I can see a couple different things. Like, for instance, maybe I want to add a requisition question to this particular requisition here. Maybe I want to add, based on different statuses, where it is, like if it's a general application, if they're about to go to a phone screening, those kinds of things. And these can be specific questions based on the duty, or it can be generalized, like, have you ever been convicted of a felony? How many years of experience do you have? Based on their answers, whether it's when they initially apply or later on as the status of that employee changes based on your statuses, whether it's pre-screening, those kinds of things, it can easily walk them through that entire thing, and it also can correspond to the actual applicant, whether they've been approved or not. And we'll see a little bit of that when it comes to the different history reports. From the actual job requisition, you can, of course, have applicants that you can overall view, so you can see the actual applicant themselves. You can see information such as their uploaded resume, if they had a score based on their questions and answers, those kinds of things. You can have, of course, notes, the history of the actual requisition. So, for instance, when it was created, when somebody applied, when specific costs were added, track all of that in a chronological order, and even print everything out, including attachments that were associated with that. Now, from the actual applicant side, I mentioned that it's a full-featured applicant system as well, because from the applicant side, you can easily click on either one of these applicants, and it'll take you to the applicant section based on their profile. So it moves over, and you can see their applicant profile if they entered any questions. For instance, these are some example questions that they can have inside the system. You can see any requisition questions that they might have answered. So any of the jobs they've applied for, what have they answered? And then again, based on that drop-down menu, you can see their activity. So even if the employee has, or the actual applicant has applied for every single position you've ever posted, you can see the activity and when they actually did that. Different history, again, in that order, that chronological order, and you can print these out. And then you can also see different notes that managers have inputted about that particular applicant. Their demographic information, their resume, and it'll do different versions of that actual resume itself. So inside the actual applicant side, if as the employee, the applicant has passed through different statuses, and these are your statuses again, maybe finally was once they're offered a position and they accept it, you might ask, well, how does this information flow over to the HRMS? Well, very easily. Just like the actual job link, you just simply onboard the actual user straight into the HRMS. So it brings all this information, all their demographic data, all their previous skills and previous employer information, brings that all in, so you don't have to hand key it, and you know that it's accurate as they have inputted in the system and confirmed that as well. What's also nice is, again, I mentioned that this is your data, so it gives you the ability to report on all this information. So again, the applicant reports, you can see the actual applicant reports that are inside here on routings by skill, by notes. You can see if affirmative action reports are something you need to look through. You can see all the different affirmative action reports, as well as from the requisition side, the requisition reports, time to fill analysis, requisition histories, cost analysis, history by recruiter, everything associated with that. And then finally, like I said, it's your information. So we give you the data dictionary as well as a report writer to write your own reports, which can utilize these reports here as templates, if you will. So you're not having to recreate the wheel. Finally, you can export this data to Excel to move that along. So I know that was a high-level overview of the actual recruiting module. The very next section would be is after you onboard an employee, for instance, they might want to go through the actual HRMS itself and start utilizing some of their information there. And really, that's where our employee self-service site really shines. The user at that point can be onboarded. We have an alerts and workflow product that can even automatically send them information. So the login links, the maybe an employee handbook, those kinds of things. And again, it's a web-based product. So once they are directed to this particular site, it can have your logo, your information, your kind of welcome messages, if you will, on the front page. And in this particular setting, if they're a first-time user, they can click on the link below to register here, and it'll walk them through pairing up their security access in this particular case. Now, after the user has created a profile, it's going to allow them to log into the screen, and they can see a couple things. From the very beginning, in this case, they can see, of course, recent messages. They can see a time-off summary, and they can see a current benefits associated with their profile. They can also see information associated with that personal demographics that were brought over from HRMS Cyber Recruiter. In this particular case, it can see information such as their first name, last name, what their marital status is, their address, telephone, dependents and beneficiaries. And what's nice is, if you notice, there's at the very top of the screen, there's an item that says changes will require approval. Now, in this particular case, the system's set up to allow users to update their information. So you don't have to do that through a form or something like that. All the user has to do is click Edit. They can change maybe their contact information, maybe a telephone number or address, whatever you would like them to change. And it can go in the system one or two ways. If you want it, if it's a certain field that you would allow it to go straight in the database, it can do that. And if not, if you want it to have some kind of approval, it can actually, once they hit save, it'll go to, for instance, somebody in HR, somebody in Payroll, whoever needs to approve that particular information can be saved on. We'll talk a little bit more about workflows and approvals with HRActions as well, but we'll just give you an idea of some of the different things that can happen here. The system also has the ability to track different life events and the open enrollment for benefits. So as a new employee, if for instance in this case, Veronica, she wants to go through and walk through and choose her benefits, she can easily do that because the system tracks all the different benefits and eligibilities. It's going to display to her what she's actually eligible for in this particular case. And it just walks her through in a nice wizard-based approach on what the different amounts that or enrollments that she is choosing for this particular new hire enrollment. If Veronica, in this case, would like to deduct $200 to her catch-up plan, it's going to keep track at the very top-hand portion of the screen what her total employee cost for all of her benefits she selected is. And the different benefits can be on coverage amounts. They can be different, of course, based on different family plans or, how many dependents or beneficiaries are associated with a specific plan. And it also tracks the dependents and beneficiaries associated. So, for instance, if Veronica would like to add a dependent or beneficiary, she could do so here as she's going through. And it'll also even be that first set of eyes, if you will, for errors in the system. So if Veronica tries to skip ahead, she wants to go to the summary, she thinks she's completed. When she tries to complete it, it'll even tell her when there's issues or problems wrong with the actual open enrollment or the new hire life event. You notice here, she did select life insurance, but she didn't choose her primary beneficiary. It tells her to go back and add one. She didn't even waive either her long-term disability or her vision plan. Okay? So it just gives you a first set of eyes from the benefits administrator point of view. It also gives the benefit administrator the ability to see who hasn't completed their actual enrollment status yet, if they're incomplete. It also gives them the ability to track reports, which we'll see later. And from an alerts and workflow perspective, if alerts and workflow is something you're interested in, it can also notify the employee or the manager or HR when someone is still incomplete or hasn't completed their enrollment yet. Just a couple things. Inside the actual section as well, it gives the ability to track PTO time. So for instance, if you have your different PTO plans, I'm sure that you never get questions based on how much time do I have left or anything associated with that. This will really reduce down those amount of questions. So for instance, their overall accruals, when they're accrued through a specific date, how many hours are available, and if you'd like, it even allows you to request time from their manager right here. They can put in their different plan, when first day off, last day off, total hours, put in some comments. And when manager will receive an email, and they'll also see overall time off requests based on exactly when the request was submitted, what the employee's available balance is, as well as how much the employee is trying to request. From a manager point of view, the manager can then in turn see his or her employees' balances, just like we saw. They can see a nice, easy-to-see time-off calendar. And they can also see, for instance, in this particular case, if they go on vacation, they can assign a approval request or route approval request to their manager, whoever they would like to. So these requests continue to flow as the manager is not in the office. A couple other things in the system. Different sections. You have the ability to review from an employment side, review your own annual pay, when that pay effective date is, different salary ranges, when your pay frequency is, information about your job, so your start date, how long you've been in position, when your hire date was. And you can also put company-specific related information. So, for instance, there's a phone list that comes with it, but maybe you have a travel site that you'd like to redirect someone to. Or maybe you have a company picnic. Any kind of information that you'd like to post, you can change and add links to this left-hand side to really utilize that. And it can also work inside this frame here, as you see. One of the other nice things about ESS is it gives you the ability to view reports, web-based reports from a reports library. So you can create those, for instance, if you need to create your own reports. And we'll talk about reports a little bit more in a little at the very end of the presentation. One of the other things that we have, I mentioned that our Sage HRMS HRActions, we have a great product that allows you to make custom and really specific workflow and forms based around HR information or information that you need to add, maybe the specific extra fields, custom fields you want to add. And that's our HRMS HRActions site. Now, if we go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and log into that. It's going to run within the frame here, as you see, so it looks absolutely seamless to the user. From an actual user point of view, in this particular case, it breaks it down into supervisor and employee actions. So from an employee standpoint, maybe we have a couple different forms to update a certification or education, those kinds of things, and we want that approved or sent into the system. Maybe from a supervisor point of view, the supervisor is going to run several different things on an actual employee. Maybe it's they want to get an attendance adjustment approved, or if they've earned comp time, something along those lines. You can easily do that. Maybe it's something more complex, like a pay rate change that you would like to track. It allows you to take these forms, maybe paper-based forms that you have today, but actually access real-time information and initiate it out in the field. So again, it's not someone from HR actually hand-keying this information once it's been passed around. In this particular case, it'll show current pay information for an actual employee. And then it'll show the proposed changes on the right. So something as simple as we want to give, in this case, Joseph, Veronica's employee, a 10% pay increase. We tab out, it'll automatically change that for you and up that information. Now, the great thing about it is it'll walk through all this HR information will be available to be viewed, but at the very end, it has its own workflow, meaning that once Veronica signs off, it still has to go to Shirley and Mary to actually sign off and have that save into the HRMS. And the workflow can be as complex or basically as easy as you need it to be based on your actual forms, your workflows. Another one, for instance, might be a performance review, performance appraisal. Again, we could take your form as it looks like today, maybe it's a paper-based form, and walk through the entire process, maybe scoring, different ratings in this particular case. When you get to the bottom, again, you have that nice workflow of exactly how it should pass through the system. In this case, it goes from Veronica, the manager, to Joseph, the employee. Joseph can either approve or disapprove, but then it's going to go to Mary and Shirley for final approval. And each step has a timestamp of when this occurred. One of the nice things that we hear back from our clients based on this software is that basically in this particular case, they can always tell where these forms are, where they are in the entire workflow process. Over paper-based forms, which you really can't ever tell. You have to go research, find out who had the form last. Or with an email, what's going on with the email. You might have to ask again. Here you can always see where the pending or approved actions are. Okay, and so that was our HRActions and ESS website. The very next section is, of course, the actual HRMS core itself. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and I'm going to log into the HRMS core. Open that up. And if you notice, this is an installed piece of software. So basically at this point, this allows the HR administrators or the HR personnel log into the system. And if you notice, you can use your Windows logon. One of the other nice things about it is you can have what's called a sample database below. And basically at this particular point, maybe you want to try just, experimenting with the system a little bit, or you want to try giving a pay increase to a certain amount of people. You can do that very easily here without having to worry if something goes wrong in your live production data. Just a nice feature in the software and just gives you that option to do so. Go ahead and log in as the master user. And basically, as it's opening the console, when you first come into the actual screen, it just gives you a nice welcome screen that it's going to describe some of the different things that you can do with the software. Any kind of updates that we release with the system, for instance, anything that's new, quarterly updates, those kind of things, it'll always be here. You can tell that in there. Inside the actual help files, depending on what screen you're on, it'll have a different help file. It'll automatically take you there. You can get that from the green question mark. And then finally, it just shows you how you can contact us through our customer support channels or live chat. It's one of the nice things, as well as how to receive PDF guides for all of our products is here as well. When you first log into the screen, you'll also notice that it defaults to the Employees section. So from the Employees section, you can very easily choose a number of different things. It breaks up the different processes and tasks into each respectively. And a task is really considered as something that you're going to perform for an actual employee individually. And a process is something that you might be mass updating quite a few employee records at a time as well. So the very first section is View Edit Employee screen. When you first come into this particular screen, what it's going to do is it asks you if you would like to search for a particular employee. You can search by the usual suspects, the last name, first name, the ID, social, their actual employee type or status, if you will. And then it has their division, department, location, as well as who their supervisor is. what their employee type is, whether they're union, consultant, salaried, or hourly. And you can filter down this list very easily. So say even something as simple as just last names that begin with the letter B. When you click that, it'll automatically start paring down that list for you. And if I choose the first record, it'll take me into the employee demographics screen that I can view each one. Now, before we get into the different tabs and data, I can jump from employee to employee record just by utilizing these arrow keys very quickly. I can also jump back and see this list again from the Find screen. Now, the nice thing about it is it remembers the list, and if I'm looking at just a specific department, it keeps me on this list, so I don't have to keep going back and forth. The other nice thing about it is it breaks down all the information based on tabs. So it starts you off with the Personal Information tab. And again, some of this information, we've already seen that. That's because, again, we have that centralized HRMS information. We don't have to worry about hand keying things over again or having silos of information. Again, it has your address and phone, your personal information, whether or not the employee should be included in EEO reporting. We can upload a photo, maybe from an employee badge photo, something along those lines. Very next is HR status. And it has a couple different fields that we want to pause and talk about. So the original hire date, their last hire date, and their adjusted seniority date. You might ask, well, why do we have 3 different dates? Well, for instance, if you add a new hire or terminate an employee, as you can see the wizards on the side here, then if you got to rehire an employee, it might be one of those things where you negotiate with the employee how much seniority they have. Maybe they were only gone for a few months, but they didn't want to lose their seniority. You can actually keep their last hire date, but use their adjusted seniority date for their benefits, whether they're eligible for benefits, how much they pay, things like, for instance, their vacation, how much vacation do they accrue based on that. And so you can actually have an adjusted seniority date that really keeps track of that, but you actually know when you really hired them, when their real last hire date was. Has different employment eligibility information that you can save, visa type, I-9 verification status, work authorization documents, military information, which leads me to a point of alerts and workflow. One of the nice things alerts and workflow can do is things like email on Veterans Day. Thank you very much for your service to all your veteran employees, those kinds of things. And we'll talk about user-defined and custom fields, but it has a high flexibility to add fields to the actual system itself. So, for instance, if you want to add specific fields like we have here, team locker, badge number, those kinds of things, you can do that. We'll also talk about custom fields and screens at the very end here. Tracks information, of course, about termination, their date, employee type, what your termination types are, your different termination reasons. Those will be here. Their forwarding address if they have one. If the employee goes on a leave of absence, you can track that here. You can add the employee to leave of absence, actually tracking the request date, their start date, what their scheduled return and actual return is. And if it was associated with an FMLA event, that'll be here as well. Has a section for actual events, so like certifications, if they're expiring, alerts and workflow can tell you that, hey, this certification expired or it's about to expire. You can email the employee, those kinds of things. It also tracks confidential employee notes. So, for instance, if you need to add a commendation or a reprimand, we can easily add one here. These would be your note types. If there was a grievance note, something along those lines, we can add those to the system as well. As well as employee attachments. Coming over from CyberRecruiter, it would bring in maybe their resume file. Those would be stored here. You wouldn't have to add that. But if you need to add one here, you could easily do that. Insert it, and it would browse out to your computer, and you can actually add that to the system. Of course, it has places for their emergency contact information. And then finally, switching over to job and pay. It has a place for their current pay, current job, and then job history, which we'll talk about in a second. But from a current pay standpoint, it just tracks all their different pay and performance, maybe a step rate. And if we give Veronica, let's give her just a slight bump in salary. And when we apply, the first thing it's going to say is, wait a minute, you've stepped outside of your salary grade range for this employee. Now, I have security rights to do so, but it might stop me in my place. But if not, if I have security rights, when I hit apply, it's also going to ask me if I want to create a job history record. And when I say yes, real quickly what it's going to do is it's going to save that information, but then it's also going to go through and look at all of Veronica's benefits. So things like 401k contributions that are based on a percentage, it will automatically know, to change that based on that information here. Also, like I mentioned, it asked me about a job history record. So whether I changed her job title, whatever that is here, her organizational information, or her salary, it's going to store changes to her information right here under her job history. If you notice, I can see all the way from when her, what her salary was back in 2002, what her title was, all the way up. And if I click on one of these plus signs, it'll actually go to that specific date, and it'll show you what everything looked like, including what her supervisor was at the time, was assigned at the time, and different pay and performance information at that specific time as well. Also show information about benefits, as we talked about, the open enrollment. So, for instance, all their insurance benefits, even archive plans, the ones that have been expired, it can show that. You can show current plans only. They'll show their savings benefits, their dependents and beneficiaries, which we spoke about. You can add those here or review different ones, including what their benefit enrollments are or the beneficiary elections are. It also displays different wellness information about the employee, their height, weight, smoker, if that's part of it. If you give a physical exam to your employees as a benefit, or any kind of drug test information, that'll be stored right here. From the time off section, you have all their different absence transactions. So you can have that sorted here. You can see that, including their overall attendance summaries, meaning all the different PTO plans they're assigned to, including their overall carryover, accrued, how much they've taken, what's available as of a certain date. From a payroll section, we do have an integrated payroll module. I'm not going to spend too much time on that today, but it has that ability as well. From a safety point of view, you have an OSHA requirements here. So, for instance, heaven forbid, if there is an accident that occurs on your work site, it allows you to answer and ask all those questions that you really need to ask to create an OSHA incident log, a OSHA 300 incident log. For instance, incident date and time, when they last worked, what was the date away, what's the information about the actual location, about the incident itself, detailed description, who was responsible for treatment. Finally, tying that to a workers' comp claim number when it was filed, including lost time and medical costs. From a career section, these should seem very familiar, as all of these would come directly over from the Cyber Recruiter software. So, for instance, skills, your educational profile, meaning all their degrees, anything there, and all their previous employer information. And then finally, I know we mentioned custom details. It's a very important part of the software because this allows you to really customize extra information that you'd like to see or how you'd like to see it. So in this case, there's a couple I've created here. One of them being as a company property field, or basically a screen. And what this allows you to do is, this allows you to assign company properties to an actual employee. There's a grid, nice little grid here, and then what it does is, these are all custom fields that I've added to the database. Date provided, date returned. In the drop-down, you can have specific company property models, who provided it, who returned it. It'll store that here. Maybe another one is, maybe you need a verification screen where you just want a bunch of different fields together all on one screen, or maybe you want it to be able to, for your security access, you would like to be able to change things very quickly and move to the next record. This allows you to do so right here. another nice thing about the custom screens. Under the custom fields, it allows you to have approximately 260,000 custom fields. So it really is flexible and allows you to do that. These custom fields are all accessible through the HRActions product as well. So the forms and workflow product. So if that's something that you're looking again to make those custom forms, you can do that through there. And it just gives you another avenue to actually walk through and perform those different tasks. From an actual reporting side, one of the nice things about the system is it really comes with all the necessary reports you'll need to get started and really utilize the system. It comes with hundreds of reports. When I click the reports section, it starts out, and if you notice, the entire menu changed here. All these different reports come with the system. Again, we give you the data dictionary as well as the ability to track and create an audit trail, meaning that anytime a field has changed, you can very easily check that out and go through. So just starting from the top, some of the different reports, you have compensation reports. I click on this particular link, and it gives me all the compensation reports in the system. Salary analysis by job code, by organization, by reason, by employee name. And what's nice about how we've designed the reports is that you don't have to be a report writing expert to filter things down. Each report has what we call standard criteria, meaning who the actual company is, the division, department, location, the employee status, whether they're active or terminated, so on and so forth. And then each report has its own specific criteria. Maybe you're looking for a date range on a specific one, those kinds of things. Maybe you're looking for a salary change report as of a certain date, those kinds of things. It just gives you the ability to track that information and really actually report on that easily without having it being a report writing expert. Have different kinds of reports. Of course, you have the EEO reports, EEO 1, 4, I-9 citizenship verification, VETS 100. Different employee and organizational reports, so that anniversary list, that the event reporting, like for instance, certifications that are expiring, a new hire log, different kind of leave reports. So if anybody that was currently on leave of absence, who's due to return from FMLA. I mentioned the OSHA reports before, so the OSHA 100, 101 accident profile, or a 300 incident log. Those are all here. Of course, you have different personal information reports. So again, an age list, a birthday list, those kinds of things. Those are easily accessible all through here. And one of the popular ones, of course, are the benefit reports. I mentioned earlier that the benefit administrator inside of ESS would have access to reports that kind of would help them out with their day-to-day duties of benefits administration. So the first thing would be maybe benefit coverage by employee. Very easily see what exactly each employee has chosen as their benefits. See that right here. The next, you might want to see it broken down by plan, a specific plan. And so you start off with AD&D, dental, and you can see exactly what each employee has chosen to actually represent that. The next one, you might say, as a benefits administrator, you might say, wow, I'd like to see premium totals by plan. Well, got you covered right here with this particular report. So you'd have total head count covered for each one of the actual plans, what the total coverage is, what the total premium is that's related to the employer, and what the employee, what their monthly contribution is, what the actual net cost is to the actual employer. See that here. And again, these have standard and specific criteria that you can report on. Finally, one of the really nice ones is the actual benefit letter. It's really great. Not sure if anyone does this today, but just an easy way to make a total compensation or benefit letter packet and send those out. So for instance, in this particular case, it just walks the employee through exactly what their salary is, of course, what they receive in the benefit package, and what that results in addition to their pay. Okay, that's the reports. one of the nice things about these reports is it's very easy to go through and modify these as well. With the system, it comes with two licenses of Crystal reports, and those reports that we saw, they're all based off of Crystal. So, for instance, that benefit letter I just showed you, I can very easily, if you'd like to change the wording or something like that, you can use this as a template to modify, make your own reports, those kinds of things. Like I said, we give you the data dictionary, and that's one of the ways that you can do that, simply through Crystal reports. Or we also have a great report query tool called Secure Query. And you can very easily create your own just by walking through the wizard. You just select the fields that you'd like to choose, even custom ones that you've added. Okay? And then you just decide how you want to group your records, how you want to sort, if you want to filter out, maybe you only want active employees. And finally, how do you want to output your results? Because all the reports that you see today, they can be exported to Excel, they can be exported to a CSV, an actual report or a Word doc. Just gives you that flexibility to go through and really work with the system itself like that. I know that was a high-level overview of some of the different modules of the HRMS and the actual HRMS itself. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to our actual question and answers and see what kind of question and answers we have. I'm going to go ahead and unmute the phones as well and see if anybody would like to discuss anything further. So hang on one second.
All guests have been unmuted.
Okay. Everyone should be unmuted now. Basically just wanted to spend this time as a question and answer session, see what we can help and provide and talk about, and basically strike up a conversation. Does anyone have any questions so far?
With the interface with ACCPAC, do we require a certain number of seats with Sage to have people access this, or is it?
Oh, okay, yeah, it's a great question. You mean as far as accessing the HRMS here?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely, great question. What the license count is based off of, the HRMS core is based off of concurrent users. So, for instance, from an administrative point of view, for instance, you can have this installed on 20 different workstations, the actual HRMS. But for instance, if you had 5 licenses, 5 people could be in at a time. Okay. So we allow that. It's concurrent uses. The actual, for instance, what we saw at the ESS and the way we do with the employees, that's based on active employee count. So you can have as many terminated employees as you like. It's only based on your active employee counts.
Okay, thanks.
That's a great question. Anybody else have any questions or anything they'd like to discuss or talk about?
Does the HRMS system have employee timesheets that they can enter their own time that flow through to the Canadian Payroll ACCPAC module?
Yeah, there are several timesheet applications that work with us. Absolutely. So that's a good point. I would definitely just I kind of want to discuss your needs more offline. Okay. But absolutely, we have several what we call endorsed solutions that work directly with that, update the time off balances, and time entry and those kinds of things are such a fluid thing. Yeah, I would definitely say let's work with a business partner to talk about that, because it's one of those things where you might have work time off based on hours worked and situations like that we want to really fully capture in a needs requirement.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But the answer is absolutely yes.
Okay.
Another great question. Any other questions or anything that you might be concerned or you want to talk about? Okay, well, I really appreciate everyone's time coming out today and spending the hour with us. Thanks again for letting us host this today, for your time today.